President Lee Jae-myung has called for stronger Korea-Brazil business ties, identifying next-generation civil aircraft, critical minerals, and K-beauty as key areas for expanding economic cooperation during a meeting with the business leaders in Sao Paulo. SK Hynix has extended its record-breaking run, posting an industry-leading 76% operating margin after reporting a second quarter operating profit of 60.5 trillion won, fueled by robust demand for AI memory chips. The death toll from Japan's powerful earthquake in Kumamoto has climbed to 13 as rescue crews race to find survivors. And experts say the magnitude 7.1 quake was likely triggered by the reactivation of the same fault that caused the devastating 2016 Kumamoto disaster. President Lee Jae-myung has sought to deepen economic ties with Brazil, identifying aviation, critical minerals, and K-beauty as promising areas for bilateral cooperation. Our President Office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports from Sao Paulo.
Creating synergy in times of a fast-changing global order. That was President Lee Jae-myung at the Korea-Brazil Business Roundtable in Sao Paulo on Tuesday, noting the need to combine Brazil's critical minerals and clean energy with South Korea's advanced technology.
글로벌 불확실성이 높아질수록 서로의 강점을 활용해서 시너지를 낼 수 있는 파트너를 만나는 것이 그 어느 때보다도 중요합니다.
He said the two countries will seek more projects to work together, building upon their strategic partnership.
차세대 민항기 공동 개발을 포함해서 핵심 광물 분야의 공급망 협력, 또 선풍적 인기를 끌고 있는 K-뷰티까지 이 세 가지 분야에서 큰 성과를 만들 수 있을 것으로 기대합니다.
Calls for expanded cooperation were echoed by Brazil's Vice President Geraldo Alckmin.
We must not merely focus on increasing the trade volume. It's important to create more added value, strengthen the production chain, and make investment together.
Joining the meeting were dozens of business leaders from the two countries, including the chairman of the Federation of Korean Industries, Ryu Jin, Hyundai Motor Group chairman Chung Hui-sun, and the head of Apex Brazil, Vladimir Müller, who is in charge of promoting trade and investment. 7 corporate MOUs were signed, including those on aerospace, digital healthcare, and critical minerals.
President Lee said that business cooperation would not be easy if governments do not resolve issues related to tariffs and regulations. He designated me for communication with Vice President Alckmin, solely dedicated to coordinating these issues.
President Lee once again noted the need for the Korea-Mercosur trade agreement, having agreed on Monday with his Brazilian counterpart Lula da Silva to speed up resuming negotiations. Later in the day, Lee visited a metal workers union office in Sao Paulo, where Lula used to work as union president decades ago after working as a metal worker in his early career. After wrapping up his state visit to Brazil, President Lee will head to Chile for a 2-day official visit to meet his Chilean counterpart, Jose Antonio Cost. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Sao Paulo.
And President Lee's tour of Brazil, Chile, and Argentina is highlighting Latin America's importance to Korea's economic security. Our Oh Soo-young joins us in the studio to examine the opportunities in trade, critical minerals, and renewable energy, and the obstacles still standing in the way. Welcome, Soo-young.
Hi, Tammy. It's great to be here.
Soo-young, so what is the broader significance of the tour, and where are the main opportunities?
Hi, thanks for the question. So beyond the bilateral relationship, this tour, it really could go beyond, it could really expand Korea's economic reach beyond its traditional partners and build a stronger presence across the global south. The three countries together represent around 280 million people and $3.7 trillion in economic output. Now, the Blue House says that Brazil holds the world's second largest rare earth reserves, while Chile ranks first in copper and lithium reserves, and Argentina has the second largest shale gas resources. Now, that creates opportunities to connect Latin American resources with Korea's strength in batteries, aerospace, defense, and advanced manufacturing.
AI needs electricity, And electricity involves everything from various types of power generation equipment to energy storage systems. These are all primary commodities, and these countries possess most of them. Chile has copper. Argentina and Chile have lithium. Brazil is a country that has everything.
Also, this does come at a time of growing geopolitical and economic uncertainty, rendering it crucial for Korea to secure its supply chains.
More important than trade is diversifying energy supply chains and critical minerals, and cooperating in future industries. Latin America can be an optimal alternative partner, especially when the Middle East and the Strait of Hormuz have shown the need to diversify Korea's energy portfolio.
Then Soo-young, among the various sectors, I'd like to ask, why has energy cooperation been highlighted as a key area of cooperation?
Well, industry experts say that Latin America not only offers abundant sunshine and wind, but also the ways to convert them into electricity. And researchers found that renewable power in parts of the region can cost roughly half as much as in South Korea. A 2024 World Bank study also estimated Brazil's technical offshore wind potential at more than 1,200 gigawatts. Now, that's around 14 times the capacity installed worldwide in that same year. The wider goal would be to link renewable generation with hydrogen and mineral processing.
Would be important, and first of all, a jointly developed solar and wind capacity that that powers both green hydrogen production and low carbon mining operations would be crucial. And second, use that clean power for a lithium processing so that Chile export not raw brine, but a low carbon battery materials, which is exactly what Korean battery makers need, is which is also the second part.
Now, this kind of model would give Korean manufacturers a diversified source of low-carbon battery materials, while also allowing Chile to retain more processing investment as well as employment.
Well, Soo-young, of course, cooperation is always easier said than done. What are the key issues to consider now?
Right, so we always talk about the potential, but the key challenge here is really turning that commercial interest into actual commitments. And Professor Kim's study of more than 100 Korean firms and public bodies found that 40% recognized Latin America's importance, but few had actually moved to launch projects.
In part, and mainly because of a lot of uncertainty, right? Political uncertainty and lack of information, and institutional issues such as the permitting and land dispute are their major concerns.
The strategy of investing locally is more effective in the Brazilian market than exporting and selling there, because tariffs and other taxes are so high that the moment a product is exported, it tends to lose its price competitiveness. So it is very important to find a good local partner and enter through investment.
I see. Both opportunities and challenges lie ahead. Soo-young, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thanks for inviting me.
SK Hynix is poised for another record-breaking quarter, driven by surging demand for AI chips. Though investors are becoming increasingly cautious about how long the rapid growth can continue. Park Junan has more.
Korean semiconductor titan SK Hynix has once again rewritten its own history. According to preliminary figures, the company's second quarter revenue reached around 79.3 trillion won, or roughly $54.5 billion. This extends its record-breaking earnings streak to 5 consecutive quarters. Operating profit reached 60.54 trillion won. What is even more remarkable is the operating margin, which pushed past the historic 72% mark set in the first quarter to reach 76% in the second. The profit growth continues to be fueled by explosive global demand for AI-related memory chips, especially next-generation high-bandwidth memory, or HBM, supplied to global big tech companies. With supply remaining tight, long-term supply contracts for both premium DRAM and NAND flash have allowed the company to maintain strong pricing power. Despite the company's undisputed record earnings, its stock price, along with those of many global memory chip makers, has plunged by over 50% from its June high, when it nearly reached 3 million won per share. This is because market watchers have started to question whether the company's growth momentum may begin to face limits going forward.
If I had to point to a reason, it's that the earnings didn't quite meet the market's expectations. There were also expectations for stronger shareholder return measures, but there weren't any major announcements on that front. At the same time, concerns remain over whether AI companies can generate sufficient returns on their capital spending, and that is continuing to weigh on sentiment toward the semiconductor cycle.
While the company said it will double its memory production capacity by 2030, the base effect from quarters of explosive growth, combined with potential macroeconomic headwinds, could cap further gains in the second half of the year. Park Junan, Arirang News.
In the meantime, Korea's stock market is shaking under an extraordinary wave of volatility, with the trading halts being triggered at a record frequency. Now, financial authorities are now pledging a full review of capital market structures to contain the chaos. Our Baek Joo-hee reports.
On Wednesday, the KOSPI plunged to the mid-5,000s and closed at 5,663.24, down by 5.98%. The KOSDAQ also suffered heavy losses, falling 6.12% to end at 662.68. A sharp plunge in both futures and spot prices triggered level 1 circuit breakers twice on each of the KOSPI and KOSDAQ markets. These circuit breakers come when the market plunges by 8% over a 1-minute period. When this happens, the market is paused for 20 minutes. And the plunge of over 16% in the space of just 2 sessions is a massive reversal for a market that was recently reaching historic heights. President Lee Jae-myung's pledge of KOSPI 5,000 became reality just 7 months into his term. From there, the rally accelerated, surging over 80% in just 20 weeks to an all-time intraday high of 9,385.59 on June 19th. But the market reversed just as fast. In about 6 weeks, the index gave back all of those gains, plunging around 39% down back to the 5,000 level. And this unprecedented wave of volatility has brought with it frequent market halts. Since they were introduced in 1998, Korea's circuit breakers had only tripped 18 times over the next 26 years. However, they have already been activated 13 times this year alone so far, peaking with unprecedented consecutive dual market circuit breakers on both the KOSPI and KOSDAQ on Tuesday and Wednesday. During the presidential tour in Sao Paulo, Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Yong-bom addressed the root causes behind the abnormal price swings. Kim noted that while the fundamental demand for the AI revolution remains intact, market doubts over big tech's revenue sustainability and new supply shocks from Chinese memory makers, such as the listing of Changshin Memory Technologies, have amplified uncertainties. He noted that Korea's market is especially vulnerable due to its high concentration of retail investors. In response, financial authorities will review the overall market structures, including single-stock leveraged ETFs and derivative mechanics.
The primary trigger was the introduction of leveraged ETFs in late May. Capital heavily concentrated into major semiconductor stocks, namely Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. Consequently, any drop in these key chip makers directly translated into severe volatility across the broader KOSPI market.
Meanwhile, Kim also emphasized that Korea must respond to the structural shocks by strengthening national R&D and making timely semiconductor investments, while financial regulators move to revamp market stabilization tools. Baek Joo-hee, Arirang News.
The relentless heat wave continues unabated here in Korea, with the scorching daytime temperatures and tropical nights offering little relief. Our Park Jae-ryung tells us more.
People are lining the banks of the Cheonggyecheon stream in central Seoul, dipping their feet in the water to temporarily forget the deadly heat. As of 6 a.m. Wednesday, heat wave alerts were in effect across most of the country. The warnings covered large parts of the nation, while advisories remained in place in several other areas. A small number of locations were under the highest level heat wave emergency warning. People are struggling to cope with the relentless heat.
I think today is the hottest it's been lately. I can't go anywhere without a parasol. I've only been walking for a minute or two since getting off the bus, but I'm already sweating. It's really hot.
It is very hot. We're from Florida, and this heat is still more intense than Florida. We are just constantly sweating and having to drink water. It's very hot.
The heat not only feels uncomfortable, but it is also life-threatening. According to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, at least 9 people have died and nearly 1,500 cases of heat-related illness have been reported since mid-May. The weekly figure had remained at around 100 or below for nearly 2 months. But in the week of July 10th to July 16th, the number jumped from 75 to 452, which is an increase of just over 500%. It fell to 225 the following week, but another 287 cases were reported in just 4 days before July 24th and 27th. The most severe conditions have been concentrated in the southern regions. In Gyeongsangnam-do province, a heatwave emergency warning was issued as the temperature was forecast to feel as hot as 38 degrees Celsius or higher, which are levels considered potentially life-threatening. It is also reported that as of 3:30 p.m. Wednesday, Yangsan in Gyeongsangnam-do province exceeded 40 degrees.
The government urged people to avoid all non-essential outdoor activities or work. It also advised people to move to air-conditioned or shadowed areas and drink a lot of water and take frequent breaks. Park Chae-ryung, Arirang News.
Rescue operations are continuing in Japan after a powerful earthquake struck Kumamoto Prefecture on Tuesday. Experts say the latest quake is believed to have originated along the same fault zone that caused the deadly quakes a decade ago. Our Park Kwon-woo reports.
At least 13 people have been confirmed dead after a powerful earthquake struck Japan's southern Kumamoto Prefecture on Tuesday. The earthquake caused widespread destruction and prompted a major rescue operation, leaving people injured and triggering fires, power outages, and significant damage to roads, bridges, and buildings.
I offer my deepest condolences to those who have lost their lives and to their bereaved families. Even now, there are people waiting to be rescued, and this is a race against time. We will marshal all available resources on the ground to save and rescue as many people as possible.
Takaichi urged residents to protect themselves and evacuate to safe locations as strong aftershocks continue. Around 300,000 people have been told to evacuate, while hundreds of self-defense force personnel have been deployed. One of the hardest hit sites was the prefecture's largest shopping mall, the Aeon Mall, where there was an explosion after the quake, although the government said the exact cause of the blast and the building's partial collapse remains under investigation. Footage from the scene showed that part of the mall had collapsed, exposing steel beams and scattering debris across the parking lot as firefighters and rescue crews searched for survivors. The earthquake also caused widespread power outages and ruptured roads across Kumamoto, a region devastated by a series of major earthquakes a decade ago. The 2016 disaster began with a magnitude 6.5 quake, followed 2 days later by a magnitude 7.3 earthquake, leaving around 270 people dead. According to Japan's Asahi and Yomiuri newspapers, experts believe Wednesday's earthquake was triggered by activity along the Hinago fault zone, which was also blamed for the initial quake 10 years ago. Experts also warned that a stronger quake could follow, just as it did a decade ago. As of 4 p.m. Wednesday, the South Korean Consulate General in Fukuoka said no casualties involving Korean nationals have been reported. The Foreign Ministry said it's closely monitoring the situation and will take all necessary steps to ensure the safety of Korean nationals in Japan. Park Kwon-woo, Arirang News.
In other news, U.S. President Donald Trump has marked the 73rd anniversary of the Korean War armistice by reaffirming the U.S.-South Korea alliance and also warning against what he called a renewed communist threat. Kim Do-yeon has the details.
U.S. President Donald Trump has reaffirmed the steadfast alliance between Seoul and Washington, describing it as, quote, a pillar of peace and stability across the Indo-Pacific. In a message marking the 73rd anniversary of the Korean War armistice on July 27th, the U.S. leader honored the courage of American forces who fought to defend South Korea, noting the staggering cost of over 135,000 U.S. casualties. He emphasized that the two nations remain, quote, united in a steadfast alliance, tested by shared sacrifice, and bound by an abiding love of freedom. President Trump also used the occasion to deliver a stern warning against the resurgence of communist ambitions, stating, quote, the same communist ambition that once sought to conquer the Korean peninsula is trying to rear its ugly head once more, this time in the West. His remarks on communism spreading in the West align with his strategy for the upcoming November midterm elections. The president has intensified his rhetoric against the ideology, recently targeting the Democratic Party over what he says is its growing Democratic Socialist faction. Notably absent from this year's message were specific references to North Korea. Last year's statement highlighted his administration's maximum pressure campaign aimed at securing denuclearization, the release of American hostages, and the repatriation of U.S. military remains. Also omitted this year was any mention of his historic 2019 Panmunjom meeting where he became the first sitting U.S. president to cross the demilitarized zone into North Korean territory. President Trump first established National Korean War Veterans Armistice Day in 2017 during his first term, issuing annual proclamations to mark the occasion through 2020. He closed this year's statement by paying tribute to the fallen and recalling the inscription at the Korean War Veterans Memorial that says, "Freedom is not free." Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Tensions in the Middle East have flared once again after the U.S. military said it intercepted an Iranian missile attack on U.S. forces. Our Do Young-eun has this report.
The U.S. military and Saudi Arabia's armed forces conducted precision strikes against Iran-aligned militant groups in Iraq on Wednesday. According to U.S. Central Command, the operation was carried out in response to attacks on U.S. forces and Saudi energy infrastructure allegedly directed by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. CENTCOM said U.S. and Saudi fighter aircraft struck multiple logistics and weapon sites in eastern Iraq after more than 30 drone attacks over the past 72 hours. The command warns that Iran and its proxy groups must halt such attacks to avoid further U.S. military action. Earlier, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it launched multiple ballistic missiles in what CENTCOM described as an attempted surprise attack on U.S. forces in the Middle East. The U.S. military said the attack took place on Tuesday and that all incoming missiles were successfully intercepted, and that the U.S. forces remain vigilant and at a high state of readiness. CENTCOM did not disclose any locations of targets, while Axios said Iran launched the ballistic missiles at U.S. military targets in Jordan. Earlier that day, Saudi Arabia also said it had intercepted and destroyed drones targeting petroleum facilities in the country's eastern region. The renewed hostilities come just a day after U.S. President Donald Trump spoke of very friendly negotiations with Iran, despite Tehran denying that any such talks are taking place. Do Young-eun, Arirang News.
Heatwave alerts have also expanded and intensified across most of the country. Seoul has now been upgraded from a heatwave advisory back to a heatwave warning. In many areas in the south, feels like highs climbed above 38 degrees Celsius, putting them around normal body temperature. So please stay hydrated, as it's one of the best ways to protect yourself in this kind of heat. And the heat isn't letting up after sunset. Seoul has now gone through 7 consecutive tropical nights, while Jeju Island has been stuck in nighttime heat for more than 3 weeks. With tropical nights continuing in many parts of the country, it's important to keep your room cool and make sure you get enough sleep. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 26 degrees Celsius, Daejeon 25 and Jeju 27 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 34 degrees, while both Daegu and Gyeongju will soar to 37 degrees. Looking ahead, skies will stay mostly sunny with this relentless heat continuing nationwide. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
And that's all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
It may have been the tomb of a young prince. Kumyeongchong Tomb, one of Silla's ancient burial mounds. The gold crown and belt discovered here were notably smaller than those found in other tombs. The Silla royal family is believed to have carefully prepared the tomb for a young life that ended too soon, placing a variety of grave goods within. Among the many artifacts, one pair of objects in particular draws the eye. Earthenware figures that seem as if they might gallop off at any moment. Look closely, and you'll notice the two figures are slightly different. Did you spot the difference? One exudes authority, wearing an ornate headdress and full armor. The horse, too, is richly adorned with elaborate harnesses. In contrast, the other figure appears plainly dressed, with hair tied in a top knot and a cloth wrapped around the head. Based on their attire and size, the more elaborate figure is presumed to be the tomb's occupant, while the simpler one appears to be a servant. So what exactly are these pottery figures which vividly reflect the everyday life of Silla people? They are, in fact, hollow vessels, pitchers. Water could be poured in through a funnel at the horse's rear and dispensed through a spout at its chest. Then why would the Silla people place such intricate vessels in a tomb of a young prince? Perhaps it was a heartfelt wish that the young prince, whose life was cut short, would never go thirsty on his long journey to the heavens.
More fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang. When did it all begin? The beginning of joy embedded in daily life, where steps of learning meet a bigger world. and history coexists. The legend continues. Innovative technologies come together to unfold a new future. Building a better tomorrow. A joy accessible to all. Always present in your daily life. JDC.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. North Korea has marked what it calls the 73rd anniversary of Victory Day with large-scale celebrations, using the occasion to reinforce its wartime narrative and showcase its current military capabilities. The events also highlighted Pyongyang's closer ties with China, while Kim Joo-ho's appearance alongside Kim Jong-un once again fueled speculation over the regime's succession plans. Now, beyond the celebrations, diplomatic and security concerns continue to grow. North Korea has once again stayed away from the ASEAN Regional Forum, while fresh claims that Pyongyang could send more trade to concerns over the deepening military partnership between the two countries. So what do these latest developments tell us about North Korea's strategic direction, and what should we be watching on the Korean Peninsula in the months ahead? For answers to this, we are joined in the studio by Ko Myung-hyun, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. A very big welcome, Dr. Go.
Good to be with you.
And also joining us online is Andrew Millard, Head of the Department of International Relations at Changwon National University. Good to see you, Professor.
Good evening. Thanks for having me again.
So first, let's start a discussion with Dr. Go. So like we've said, North Korea has used its Victory Day celebrations to link its Korean War narrative with its current military situation. What kind of message should we read into that?
No, I think on this occasion, at least, North Korea has essentially mounted a quote-unquote a normal celebration or marking of the anniversary of the end of the Korean War, which North Koreans call it as a Victory Day. It's the day when the North Korea, China on one side, and the Iranian nation forces on the other side signed the armistice agreement, which actually ended the combat phase of the Korean War. So in that sense, I think just bringing in the wartime veterans and then essentially, as you said, reinforcing the wartime narrative is something any other state would do in an occasion like this. So the reason why this is interesting, though, is the fact that this is not something that North Korea usually does, on a day that actually refers to, connected to a major event in their history, such as the foundation of the party or the state, and including this occasion like this that celebrates the end of the war back in 1953, because North Korea's purpose of marking the anniversary has changed over time. Whereas before, only like 5-6 years ago, North Korea would use an occasion like this to mount a major parade showcasing their military hardware, for instance. And back then, though, North Korea was using these occasions to project power, or at least the perception of power. But now North Korea probably feels confident enough that it doesn't require to mount a political showcase or military show. So I think in that sense, this is a reversion to, say, a normal way of marking the anniversary of such as the end of the Korean War. Is in fact, in a way, paradoxically speaking, is an expression or manifestation of North Korea's confidence.
We could read confidence through the latest moves. But if we stick with the celebrations, then Professor Millard, China was also in the spotlight. Should we see that as a sign of improving North Korea-China relations? And also as Pyongyang grows closer to Moscow, where does Beijing fit in the picture?
So I think Dr. Go actually made a very good point there. Actually, really, if you look at this, this was quite a normal celebration. So North Korea has been celebrating this, what they call the Victory Day, the armistice agreement, since 1996. And we have to remember this goes back to the end of the Korean War. So I don't know if we should be really overthinking this too much in terms of what does this show about the North Korea, China, North Korea, Russia sort of relations. I think we should be focusing on this as just showing what it is. This is the Victory Day parade. This goes back to when China was a very big partner for North Korea in the Korean War. So during this parade, during this event, lots of performances sort of recognizing the sacrifice made by the Chinese troops and so on. The visiting of the cemeteries where, of course, Chinese troops are also buried and so on. So on that part, I think we can just say, really, this is, like Dr. Go said, just sort of going back to the normal sort of idea of what this event actually is. Having said that, of course, if we do just go back to June, that was, of course, just a couple of months ago, a month and a half, when President Xi visited Pyongyang. And remember, that was his first overseas visit of the year. So quite significant that he made the trip across to Pyongyang. So I think we can see on the whole that definitely Pyongyang, Beijing relations are continuing to improve. What was said sort of behind closed doors in that summit, maybe there was a little bit of pressure from Beijing to say, look, remember who your long-term partner has been, who has been for the past 70, 80 years, sort of your economic, political security partner, neighbor. So maybe just remember some of those roots. So potentially there was a little bit of pressure. So that's why maybe there has been a bit more focus on China. But again, generally, the Korean War, this was all about the Chinese-North Korean relationship, nothing really to do with Russia. So I don't think there's too much to look into on that aspect.
All right, thank you for that. Now, Dr. Go, another thing that caught many's eyes were the appearance of Kim Joo-wei. We have talked about this a lot. Many have said that it's still early to speculate, but from a succession standpoint, how significant did you see this latest appearance?
Well, when it comes to Kim Joo-wei, Kim Jong-un's first daughter, I would say, so it's all about the optics. And then I think North Korean again kept up the pattern of showcasing Kim Jong-un showcasing Kim Joo-wei alongside Kim Jong-un side by side. So this has a lot of significance in North Korea because nobody in North Korea can essentially stand in front of Kim Jong-un. The maximum they can do is stand side by side. The rest will have to stand behind them. So just the geometry of the optic shows that Kim Joo-wei is a very important personality in the North Korean regime. But we also know that South Korea's intelligence service, National Intelligence Service, has testified in the Korean National Assembly that Kim Joo-wei has moved from being considered as heir to a phase where Kim Joo-wei would get essentially an official title, also called the heir designation phase. So even though the NIS or National Intelligence Service has put a lot of caveat around this assessment, so North Korea, at least when it comes to the optics or showcasing Kim Joo-wei's standing in the regime, seems to be keeping up with the pattern. There's a continuity here that Kim Joo-wei clearly has some sort of consolidated position within the regime. But we have to remember that she's only 13 years old, or speculated to be only 13. So clearly, there's no power struggle or jockeying for power on the part of Kim Joo-wei. So Kim Joo-wei is given this position now, the optics, the geometry, and all that by her parents probably, and that means that Kim Joo-wei still is essentially a prop, quote unquote, in the overall propaganda machine of North Korea. So in North Korea, like in any authoritarian regimes, you get power through power struggle. And clearly, Kim Joo-wei is too young for that. So in that sense, even though the optics shows that Joo-wei is on the road to become the heir, the official heir of her father, that nothing is assured for her. So until we get an official confirmation, essentially the regime announcing that Kim Joo-wei is indeed the heir to Kim Jong-un, nothing is sure, nothing can be taken for granted.
Right, so it's definitely something that we'll have to watch very closely moving forward. Now, beyond the celebrations, let's also turn to diplomacy. Professor Millard, the ARF once again reaffirmed its commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. What did you make of that? Did you see any change from the previous approach?
No. And to be honest, I think it would have been unrealistic to expect any sort of major change. So if we look back over the past 6 months, over the past year, at various different summits, so various different multilateral summits, bilateral summits, meetings between, for example, Trump and Xi and so on, and President Lee in various summits. Generally, the official line of all of the states around the world has been to maintain this idea, of denuclearization. So, like I said, it was unrealistic to expect a slightly different tone from the ARF. Now, what does this say? This suggests that sort of behind the scenes, there's also no one really pushing for a new agenda either. We have a lot of states, maybe unofficially, starting to change some of their opinions, change their tones. So I think we're starting to see a lot more countries, a lot more states realize, you know what, North Korea has nuclear weapons. It's having this burgeoning relationship with Russia, with China as well. It's not going to change. It's not going to denuclearize. It's not going to give them up. This is the reality now. So I think even though right now the official line is still to push for denuclearization, we're starting to see more and more states actually behind the scenes, sort of unofficially move away. So we could see that, again, if we go back to the Xi visit to Pyongyang back in June, the official statements, neither the Chinese nor the North Korean statements mentioned anything about denuclearization. So that was a little bit of a change. Also, if we go back to June when President Lee gave his sort of 1-year anniversary address, he also didn't mention North Korea at all. Only later when he was asked questions in the Q&A. So I think definitely behind the scenes, over the next year or two, maybe we will start to see a little bit of change. But for right now, the general consensus is to maintain that sort of default denuclearization position.
Right. So as for now, nothing's really actually new right now. So given this situation, North Korea has quickly pushed back, and Kim Yo-jong, the sister of Kim Jong-un, said that the country's nuclear capabilities will continue to advance moving forward. Do you think it was more than just a response? And also, what do you think Seoul should be looking closely at?
Well, I agree that it was probably just a response by North Korea, essentially like a pro forma response by North Korea to any kind of challenge posed by the international community to North Korea's aspiration to be recognized as a nuclear state. So I completely agree with Professor Miller's assessment that the ARF announcement, or like a statement that came out of ARF reaffirming the need for North Korea's nuclearization, by now sounds very hollow, and it's essentially even though it sounds hollow, the reason why it was reaffirmed this time essentially is a reflection of the policy inertia, or like a lack of policy ideas about how to achieve North Korea's denuclearization. We know that even though the countries that joined this statement, including China and Russia, are there, but then China and Russia, they have challenged this idea that North Korea's denuclearization should be any sort of priority when it comes to dealing with North Korea. We know South Korea's own Ministry of Unification, Chung Dong-young, mentioned that even though denuclearization is still a policy objective for South Korea, the engagement should be more important. So we know that the denuclearization is losing essentially steam as a policy drive. So in that sense, I think North Korea understands what's going on in the international stage. So I think this is the reason why North Korea didn't react aggressively or with hostility to this statement. They know what's going on, they know that nuclearization as a policy objective is losing steam. So I think North Korea essentially repeated their long-standing response to this kind of statements.
We'll have to really watch on what North Korea would do next. But this also comes as North Korea skipped the ARF for another year. Professor Millard, why do you think Pyongyang is putting more weight on China and Russia rather than on multilateral diplomacy?
I think it simply comes down to North Korea's perception of where their priorities lie. What are they benefiting from these two different fora? And so when it comes to the ARF, so the ASEAN Regional Forum, which is generally more focused on security issues, so traditional security issues like denuclearization and so on, confidence building measures and so on throughout the region, and also non-traditional security. When it comes to the ARF, if you look back over its sort of history, in terms of non-traditional security, there has been some positive gains made in that area. When it comes to traditional security, however, so for example, territorial disputes and so on, actually the ARF hasn't really been able to do very much. Now that's maybe a little bit arguable, but I think most people would agree with that. And so for North Korea, they're looking at the ARF, and there's nothing really to benefit from them either being there or not being there. They know that the ARF is going to promote officially denuclearization. So for them, very simple, if they focus on deepening their relationship with Russia and China, where with Russia, they're going to get more technical know-how, technology sharing on sort of security aspects and things like that, and from China, a lot of economic support and so on, then very simple, the tangible results can be seen with that deepening axis with Russia and China.
Right, indeed. So they are really looking at the benefits that they could actually get from these countries. Now, speaking of which, there are concerns lately that North Korea is also considering to have another deployment of their troops to Russia. So if this actually happens, Dr. Go, what would it mean for the security on the peninsula?
Well, clearly it's going to have very serious, even severe ramifications for the security in the Korean peninsula, because it will ensure that the relationship between North Korea and Russia is beyond transactional. It's in fact very much a very strong, tight military alliance, and we're talking about Russia with a very powerful military technology that could easily be transferred to North Korea. But having said that, though, it's not so clear, or it's yet to be clarified whether this report that North Korea is about to send 30,000 soldiers to Russia is whether it's in fact true or not. I mean, it doesn't mean that the Ukrainian government, which essentially share this intelligence or publicly is lying about this. It could be that the two sides have, Russia and North Korea have discussed about repeat of redeployment, also redeployment of North Korean soldiers to Russia again, but then North Koreans may be preempting such an action being taken place. But then, having said that, this reason why we have to be skeptical about this is that the Ukrainian government had made a similar announcement last year. And then last year, the Ukrainian government had mentioned that the Russia again was planning to invite up to 30,000 North Korean soldiers to Russia, and that was, and then so it was the same around the same time, and also we're talking about the same level of troop deployment. So we don't know whether this is going to happen or not. And then the South Korea's intelligence service has also reported that they haven't observed any significant signs that North Korea is readying itself to send up to 30,000 soldiers to Russia. The last time North Korea did it back in 2024, the deployment has been so observable that it was very clear that North Korea was sending a sizable number of troops to Russia. We are not hearing this from the South Korean intelligence yet. So in that sense, I think we have to be a little bit skeptical about this report, at least for now.
Nothing's fixed yet. But what about the response coming out from Europe, Professor Millard? How concerned is Europe about this growing North Korea-Russia cooperation and partnership?
So, firstly, I agree with Dr. Go that at the moment we do need to be a little bit skeptical. So far, neither Pyongyang nor Moscow have confirmed this. And like Dr. Go said, last year there were similar ideas. But we should also remember, if we go back to 2024, when North Korea first started deploying those troops in smaller numbers to Russia, then the Ukrainians, Zelensky, they were again the first to say this is going to happen. Even though Moscow and Pyongyang, again, were still denying it then, actually that turned out to be true. So again, we do need to be a little bit careful, but there is the possibility it might happen, considering also that at the moment Russia is in a pretty bad situation. It's losing troops, has quite high casualty rates, needs to replenish those. Would 30,000 troops be possible? That is a big question. So maybe the number may be smaller, but again, they could happen. Now, from the European side, it's becoming more and more concerning the longer this goes on. 2 years ago, when North Korea was first starting, then it was considered a little bit maybe more short-term. Russia maybe just using North Korea just for its own benefit. However, now we're into 2-3 years of cooperation, where it seems the relationship, it's only getting stronger. Now this is turning much more into a long-term security situation for Eurasia and also for the Korean Peninsula, Northeast Asia, and so on. So I think the Europeans are becoming a little bit more concerned that this is not just short-term, this is long-term, again, and will expand into other areas like space technology, cyber, and so on and so forth. So I think that's where the Europeans are starting to be more concerned.
Right. Clearly, there are the relationship is seeing a lot of cooperation in many aspects as well. But before we conclude our discussion tonight, Dr. Go, what kind of variable would you be watching over the second half of the remaining year?
So I think we should be watching out for the potential friction between Washington and Seoul. So we know that the OPCON transfer that's being carried out between the two countries have a little bit of mismatch about the endpoint. And also there seems to be that the United States has thinking about a different mission profile for the U.S. forces stationed in South Korea. And then that has implication for South Korea's relationship with China, because the USFK, its mission is being reoriented away from North Korea towards China. And I think the discussion between South Korea and the United States are engaged in a very serious discussion about defining the mission, as well as what kind of implications that will have for the South Korean posture, military posture regarding North Korea especially. So I think this is it's essentially a very technical issue, but something that we should be watching out carefully. And also, obviously, there's North Korea. North Korea is keep carrying out its build-up when it comes to nuclear capability. And North Korea is very quiet right now, but then they might surprise us at any given moment. So whenever North Korea surprises us, that's actually a crisis. So something that we should be having an eye on.
Right, definitely. Plenty of things to watch and look forward to in the coming months ahead. But as for now, we'll have to leave our discussion here tonight. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Go.
My pleasure.
And of course, Professor Millett as well. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.